I am so tired of coming on this podcast every single week and telling you to stop playing T.Y. Hilton. Like, just stop it.
Mikey needs help.
Mikey needs help.
I was like, if you don't have Jeff Wilson in here, and if you don't run it on first down, I'm gonna strangle you through that TV.
You should know better than everyone else. That fool tears you up when you plays you.
Yeah, but he
Don't you want him on your team?
I have him at number 25.
Thank you. Fine. Todd's the reasonable one on this show.
I take issue with everything he said there.
Well,
I really do.
DeAndre Swift. He's gonna break them tackles, son.
That's bold. That's bold. That's putting your nuts on the table right there.
Hey, there's the first time for everything.
Waxing poetic over here with Todd Diamond.
Dude's old.
So what? He's not as old as Brady, and you're jerking him off before the show starts.
I have Sutton in my top 10. I have him at number 9. Yes.
You know what? I'm just canceling the league. I can't do this with you guys. All right, welcome to another edition of the MHA Podcast. It's July 26th, and today we're going to talk about some quarterbacks. And of course, that's important in our league. We do a point per completion, so it'll be interesting to see where everybody has everybody, I guess. And as we get into it, guys, I want you to give me just a quick tease. Just give me a hot take, whether it's a good take or a bad take for a quarterback, and then we'll talk about it once we get in. So, Mikey, give me a hot take.
Ooh. I guess my hot take is that Kyler Murray is going to finish outside the top 10.
Ooh, I saw that on your rankings. That's a good one. Todd, do you have a hot take for me?
Zach Wilson will finish in the top 20 of quarterbacks this year.
Mikey, does that constitute a hot take?
I don't know.
I mean, you have him 24th. I have him 25th. Todd has him 16th. So if Todd would have said top 16, maybe it would have been a hot take. So hot take number 16 there, Todd. So you like Zach Wilson is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We can go with that. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts and on that, gentleman.
Does Todd like Zach Wilson because Zach Wilson likes hot mamas?
Oh, I bet she does. There's got to be something involved. And I'll just quickly give a hot take myself. Derek Carr could be a top 10 quarterback. I know looking at Mikey's rankings, he's pretty close to where I'm at with Derek Carr, but I think I like Derek Carr. And so I don't know if a lot of people do. A lot of the rankings, a lot of the podcasts I've been listening to, they're not super high on him, but it seems like me and Miguel are pretty high on him. So we'll talk about Derek Carr. All that and more. So it's pretty much about quarterbacks here on this episode. Let's go through some news.
This reporter was possibly a little hasty earlier. Would like to reaffirm his allegiance to this country and its human president. May not be perfect, but it's still the best government we have. For now.
Kyler Murray got paid, y'all. A lot of money to stick around. So he will be in Arizona for the time being, which is probably, I would say, a good thing for him. But I'm a little higher on Kyler Murray than the rest of you, at least for this season. Some bad news. Texans rookie John Mechie III will miss the rest of the season dealing with a bout of leukemia. It's a treatable form of leukemia, but we were talking about him on the rookie show. Unfortunately, he will not play this season. We wish him all the best. Michael Thomas on the training camp PUP list, although the training camp PUP list is different than the regular season list. As the training camp PUP list, you can come off tomorrow if you wanted to, but Michael Thomas still dealing with injuries. A couple of news that I saw today, actually. Chris Carson going to retire. We were just talking about him on the last podcast, dealing with a neck injury, and unfortunately won't be playing NFL football anymore, which is tough because he was a fun running back to watch and was productive, at least for the fantasy circles. Another name that's going to stick around for another year. How about Julio Jones? Now a Buccaneer. Be teamed up with Tom Brady, a couple of the old veterans in the NFL, trying to steal a ring, get one from that Buccaneer bandwagon. And one last piece of news, and you guys can chime in once I'm done here if you want to talk about any of this, but I saw recently that Marquise Brown, one of Kyler Murray's new weapons, dealing with a hamstring injury. Doesn't seem to be too serious, but currently on the shelf. So anything that stands out about any of these news or notes that you guys want to talk about, or should we just go on to some MHA trivia?
Well, the Julio thing, that to me, I know he's had his injuries last few years. He's 33, but this kind of reminds me a little bit of when Randy Moss,
Oh, come on. Are you serious right now?
I hear me out. So why I think this might work is knowing, okay, Julio put up great fantasy numbers, with Matt Ryan throwing the ball, especially, in the offense that he was in. But now he's going to the Buccaneers, where Tom Brady, best quarterback ever, I guess at this point. It pains me to say that, but knowing like, okay, a Hall of Fame quarterback is throwing me the ball, and he's gonna make me better to some degree. It's that to me, that just makes Julio want to work even harder. So this I really like. I think this. I'm not saying I'm putting Julio in the top 10, but this to me is a big one. Is a big one.
So you're telling me, and I'll let Mikey chime in just a second here. So you're telling me that Julio Jones isn't going to be in line for 98 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 23 touchdowns? Oh, come on, Todd. And if he does, if you even say he does, that's a number one quarter. That's a number one wide receiver. Not a guy outside your top 10.
He'll get. I'm not saying he'll get that, but he'll get maybe something, maybe two or three tiers down from that. So I don't know that it just I don't know when you have a great quarterback to throw the ball to, it makes a world of difference. And Julio, we know, can even at age 33, he's capable of doing that. And Tom Brady, physical wide receivers, loves those ones and can throw the ball up to him. So that's kind of what I think on that.
Mikey.
Oh God, here it comes.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I'll say this. He is almost 4 years older than Randy Moss was at that point. So I don't think it's comparable. I'm trying to figure this move out. Like, either Chris Godwin is not going to be ready when the season starts, so they figured they needed somebody to replace him, or they're just trying to fill that Antonio Brown type role that happened last year. But then they also brought in Russell Gage. So I don't know. Maybe it's confusing. Maybe they're not going to run the ball at all. That's also possible.
Still like,
I am just flabbergasted. I didn't expect the craziness to start so soon. Julio Jones. So you talked about Randy Moss had 23 touchdowns in that amazing season. The last 5 seasons for Julio, 22 touchdowns. The last 5 seasons combined. He's only had 1 season where he's had 10 or more touchdowns, and that was 10 in his second year. He's just a placeholder. He's not gonna do much for fantasy relevance. He's not gonna put up 7 to 8 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown every week. If anything, he's getting 2 to 4 catches, 20 yards. He's an old man. We saw what he did last year, which was almost nothing.
Now, in fairness,
31 receptions last year. Yes, it's Ryan Tannehill.
I like to play devil's advocate here, but in fairness, Julio was never, ever healthy last year. Not in preseason, training camp, during the season, whatever. Like, he could never even practice before games. So I don't know. From everything I've heard, he's healthy now. So you never know. And I'm not saying that he's going to be back to who he was. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I think there's a decent enough shot he'll be better than he was last year.
What about 2 years ago when he played in 9 games and had 51 receptions and 3 touchdowns? Or is it going to be closer to 3 years ago when he had 99 receptions and 6 touchdowns? I don't know. I don't see it. Age is creeping up, and being injury prone is part of being old too. 9 games 2 years ago, 10 games last year, and even in 10 games, only had 31 receptions. It's just not a lot. He's not healthy. I get your point, but
there's no way of knowing what his role is going to be. I mean, if Godwin's healthy, then there's a lot of people there in Tampa.
Yeah, for sure. He's just trying to steal a ring. That's what he's there for. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Marquise Brown. I don't think there's anything major with that. Chris Carson. Anybody worried about Michael Thomas? High on him, low on him. I guess we could talk about him during the wide receiver episode, but I'm not super high on him. I'm not expecting too much. I'm not forgetting about him either. There's a point in the draft here where the upside's gone, and it's like, well, do I go Russell Gage or Michael Thomas? So at some point, someone will take a chance on him, but we'll just keep an eye on it as we go through. Let's get into some MHA trivia. You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
When you play
MHA trivia,
you win or you die.
So this time, we're going to go with true or false. So I'm going to give you a statement, and you're going to tell me whether it's true or false, and whoever gets the most points wins the game. Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
Easy enough, right, Miguel?
It's easy enough.
All right. It's all about quarterbacks, so be ready for that. Okay, here we go. So Tom Brady finished with a quarterback high in our league of 936 total points. That's a lot of points, isn't it? Yes, it is. I'll have to answer my own questions. But was that number the highest of all time in our league? So I guess when I'm saying Tom Brady finished with a quarterback high of 936 points, and that was the highest number of all time. True or false? Let's get that right. So I can't even do it right.
I'll say true.
Todd says true. Mikey, what's your guess?
I will. I'll also say true.
So they both say true, and they are both incorrect. The number one scoring at quarterback in our league took place in 2013 with Peyton Manning, who had 966 points. And Breeze also had more than Tom Brady last year. He had 940 points in 2011. But 936, that's the highest in a long time since 2013. So Tom Brady, what a season he had. We'll obviously talk a lot about him in this episode. All right, statement number 2, it's 0-0. Justin Herbert led all quarterbacks with 9 50-point games. True or false?
I know that's false because that was part of my notes.
Attaboy. So Mikey is right. The answer is false. Who had the most then?
I believe it was Tom Brady.
That is correct. How many did he have?
Well, I had down 12, but I never count the last week, so I'm not sure if...
That's what I had was 12. At least that's what I put down. But yeah, Herbert, 9 50-point games is pretty incredible, especially in his second year. But Brady, 12 50-point games. I think most of us, when we think of good days for quarterbacks, or maybe that's considered more great days, 50 points, we'd love to see our quarterbacks reach that mark. Okay, next one. Derek Carr had more completions than Josh Allen in 2021. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
I'll say false.
The answer is true. How about that? Reason why I like Derek Carr. 428 completions to 409 for Josh Allen.
It's all dink and dunk.
We'll see if anything opens up this year. We'll go to the next one. Aaron Rodgers had more passing yards than Kirk Cousins. True or false?
False.
I'll say it's false.
And you would both be correct. Cousins had 4,221 and Aaron Rodgers 4,115. So Aaron Rodgers, less points, but obviously more touchdowns than Kirk Cousins. Next statement, Matt Stafford had more passing touchdowns than Justin Herbert.
going to say true.
Yeah, I'll go true.
The answer is it's true. Matt Stafford, 41-38. What a season Matt Stafford had in his first year in Los Angeles. All right, here's a question that might not be on your notes. Cam Newton had more fantasy points in his first 2 seasons than Justin Herbert. True or false?
Oh. I feel like this is a trick question. I'm going to say true.
I'll say false.
And the answer is it's false. Well done, Todd. I think you tie things up here 3-3. Herbert outscored Newton in his first 2 seasons, 1,663 to 1,331. So Herbert, quite the first 2 years in Fantasyland. Next statement, we have 2 more. Hopefully we don't end up with a tie or have to come up with one on the fly. Let's just do 1 more. This is going to be it for all the marbles.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out which one I want. Okay. Matt Stafford threw for 41 touchdowns in 2021. He also threw for 41 touchdowns in 2011. In 2011, he had more total fantasy points than he did last season. True or false? If you need me to repeat that, I can.
I'll say false.
Mikey Renault.
I'll say true.
And the answer is, it's true. He scored 836 points more than a decade ago. He scored 807 last year. So Mikey is the winner of MHA Trivia. Congratulations, Miguel.
Calvin Johnson.
What's that?
Said yay, Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so quarterbacks, we'll keep going on here. First part of this is I got to bring up my notes now. I'm just going to go through the top 10 quarterbacks from a year ago. So make sure I get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so here are your top 10 quarterbacks from 1 year ago. Tom Brady, of course, 936 points. A lot more points than number 2. Justin Herbert, 884. Josh Allen, 866. Patrick Mahomes, 860. Matt Stafford, 807. Dak Prescott in the 6th spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, Dak Prescott in the 6th spot, 794 points. 7th, Aaron Rodgers, 760. Joe Burrow, 736. In the 9th spot, Kirk Cousins, 727. And Derek Carr, so finishing with 717 points. Those are your top 10 from a year ago. Kyler Murray just outside of that, because I know we'll talk about him for sure. So, guys, what is your draft strategy on quarterbacks? And it's early. Things could change. Injuries could pop up. But if we were drafting, let's say tonight or maybe tomorrow morning, whatever the case may be, are you guys waiting on quarterbacks? And honestly, you don't have to share because people listen to this podcast and you may not want them to know. So you can just give me some sort of other information on quarterbacks. But I'll start with you, Todd. Are you waiting on quarterbacks? Do you want to get one early? Do you want to get one in the top 5? How are you gauging quarterbacks at this moment in time on July 26th, more than a month left to go before our actual draft?
The way I look at quarterbacks, I still look at drafting them a little bit later. Now, how late, that kind of gets tweaked from year to year and so forth, because I still value, running backs. I know it's like a broken record all the time, but it's the truth. The running backs, I'd rather have 3 good running backs than just one. And I get it. Quarterbacks in our league, could put up 50 or more. I get it. But that doesn't always, just because your quarterback puts up 50 or 60 points, that doesn't always guarantee you're going to win your week. So to me, I still look at drafting quarterbacks later.
Mikey, how are you viewing quarterbacks these days?
This is the most fascinating draft, I think, going in. Last year, I was pretty certain that the depth on quarterbacks was low and that they were going to go earlier, and they did. This year, it's for me, it's a little bit different. Not in the sense that quarterbacks are that much better. I do think they are a little bit deeper to a point, but I think that the running back position has injury concerns all over the board. And I think there's not a lot of top flight wide receivers either. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how that affects the way people look at the quarterback position. Will they still go running back and receiver the first 2 rounds because the depth is not as good there as it previously was? I don't know. For me, I'll look at, and this could have been purely coincidental last year, but top 6, guys were all, playoff teams.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the only time that's happened, but I mean, you needed to have a really good quarterback last year. So, I mean, it's telling you it's super, super important that you get one of those guys. But, man, look, there's a certain point, like the middle part of this, and this is where I think it gets real tricky. If Todd's going to wait until the 6th or 7th round, like after you get past like 14 or 15 with quarterbacks, it gets really booty. I can see scenarios where people are taking backups earlier than they would in the past.
Really, backups?
Well, we've
Well,
always
that would just
kinda
mean-
had that issue, at least my opinion, that backup quarterbacks get taken early already in our league. So you're saying it could get worse than that?
Yeah, it's pretty. It's nasty. Like that after that 14, 15-ish type. It's nasty after that.
Just quarterbacks that were drafted in the 6th round last year. Tom Brady went in the 6th round, and then Justin Herbert, 1 pick ahead of Todd's pick. Then he went with Matt Ryan. So be careful in that 6th round. At least I believe you'll have a late pick in round 6 based on where you're drafting. You're drafting 3rd overall. So based on the 6th round, you'll be drafting near the end of that 6th round. So just be ready. Just be on top of it. In terms of, and I always ask you guys this question every year, so I'm gonna ask it again because I think it's important. In terms of how many quarterbacks on the list do you feel comfortable having as your number 1 guy? I think Mike, you said something to the effect of 4 or 5 last year. I probably said something of the effect of 11 or 12. I feel like that's for me the case every year. Do you guys have a number when you look at your list? Is there a cutoff where, like, at least for me, looking at it right now, I would say up to 13?
No way.
In terms of being comfortable?
Yeah, I was around that same number. You had 13. I'd probably maybe like 12, but yeah, I'm right around that same number of comfortable.
So, Mikey, you're saying you want the elite of the elite?
Well, I'm saying there's a difference between comfortable. Are you comfortable like competing for a playoff spot, or are you comfortable trying to compete to win the whole thing? Because if you're trying to win the whole thing, I believe that it's probably 7 or 8.
Okay. Yeah, I think in terms of quarterback play, if you're willing to wait, and you mentioned even just a moment ago where maybe the depth on the top quarterbacks, or excuse me, the top running backs, top wide receivers isn't there. There isn't a lot of depth. We talked about this on the last show. We're like, wow, wide receivers really not that deep, at least with the best of the best guys. And there's injuries already on running backs, and so that position's not as deep either. So do you feel like you have to get those early guys? You have to draft that, those Diggs, those Kareem Hunts and get those as opposed to going with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert in the first 2 rounds. Because I feel like if what you're saying, Mikey, is true, then it's you have to get those running backs and wide receivers early. And now, of course, someone will draft a quarterback in the first round, a couple in the second, a couple in the third. But if you're concerned about the depth at the other positions, then you may have to wait till 8, 9, 10 in terms of quarterbacks, if I'm making sense there.
Maybe, but see, the way I look at it is when there's not depth at the other positions, it means there's a big middle. I don't know if that makes any sense, but so if there's a big middle where all the guys are the same, your quarterback can make up the difference a lot of weeks.
Yeah, this is true. I think depending on, and we'll talk about the quarterbacks and what we think they can accomplish on a weekly basis. Obviously, if you have one of the elite of elites, and we talk about the Herberts or the Bradys that can get you 50 points 8 to 12 times a year, then you're right. They can make up for those days where you're, I don't know, Aaron Jones is injured or your Devontae Adams is injured or whatever the case, or even on a bye week for that matter. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see because quarterbacks were such a big story for our league last year. And I feel like the league always will tend to go to what happened last year. So if it was all wide receivers that were killing it, they all get drafted in the first round. So do quarterbacks go earlier than normal? People want the Josh Allens and the Matt Staffords and the Patrick Mahomes, then they're going to draft them early because that's what can win you a game if they're on. So, and we'll go through the quarterbacks and individually and let you know who we like and who we don't like and who to keep an eye on. We'll talk about some sleepers and some busts. So let's just get into it here. Who should be the top quarterback drafted? We do not have a consensus here. So Todd, who is the number one guy you have on your list?
Number one guy on my list is Josh Allen. To me, I just don't think it's even close. Last year, 4,000 yards, 36 touchdowns, only 15 interceptions. This year, I think he goes 5,000 yards, throwing 40 touchdowns, and he has one more interception at 14. But I just think this is the year that Josh Allen takes that just takes that leap and really just shows the NFL world I'm the best quarterback in the league and going forward. So that's why I think he will be the best quarterback in fantasy this year.
All right, well, let's talk about Josh Allen. We'll let Mikey. I have everyone's rankings right in front of me. Mikey doesn't have him as the number one guy. He has him fourth. So before we reveal who you have as your number one, Miguel, just give me some thoughts on Josh Allen at number 4.
Well, with Josh Allen, the reason that I could not put him at number 1 is, part of this is they lost their offensive coordinator in Brian Daboll, who's now the head coach of the Giants. Brian Daboll was like a more pass-heavy offensive coordinator, and now they're going to Ken Dorsey, who was the quarterback's coach there. So it's not like a big transition, but there was rumblings in Buffalo that there was a little bit of friction between head coach Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll because he thought that they were passing the ball too much and he wanted to run the ball more. Part of the reason why they brought James Cook in the draft was to be more of a running team as opposed to a passing team, which could also help Josh Allen and his ability to run the ball. But I don't know. I just feel like his volume won't necessarily be what it was given that change. Now, I do like the move that they made to add Jamison Crowder because I think he'll be a better slot option than Emmanuel Sanders was. But I don't know. Like, Allen's never been a big yardage guy either.
Yeah, he's probably not going to get 5,000, but I mean 4,400 is still pretty good.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's my opinion on it. I think they're going to be a less
Sure.
pass heavy team this year.
And it's hard to put up those type of numbers every year. And I think, well, I mean, while my number one quarterback is Josh Allen, just based on his rushing ability, I think there's something to be said with a team trying to win the Super Bowl. They do not care about stats whatsoever. I think for them, it's about being healthy in the playoffs. It's about having a balanced team. Now, the problem I see with Buffalo is while James Cook was drafted, he's more of a pass catching running back than he is an in between tackles guy. So while they have the same running back core they do last year, and they'll try to run those guys a little bit more. I feel like with Gabriel Davis taking a step forward last year, they still have Dawson Knox, who caught a bunch of touchdowns last year, and their offensive line is fantastic. Like, why would he not? I mean, he is so good rushing the ball, passing the ball, and a team. I mean, he had 8 50-point games last year, so that's another kind of guy, and he had 2 70-point games. So while I think there is something that you can't ignore that they're trying to win the Super Bowl, and maybe they want to run more because they want to keep everybody healthy. I just don't know if they have the backs to carry that load and then be successful off those backs. But that's my opinion. Mikey, who is your number one quarterback, and tell me why?
Mine's Tom Brady. And it's pretty simple for me. I mean, I know he's, going to be 45 years old August 3rd, and he retired and he unretired. But this team, all they do is pass. Like, they literally threw the ball. 67% of their plays were passes last year, which is ridiculous. You're talking about, damn near 70% of the time they're throwing the ball. He averaged over 40 attempts a game. And what's really changed? Like, they've lost Gronk, but I think they're going to be more of a 4 wide receiver team now, given that loss. But they didn't really do anything that would tell me that they're going to all of a sudden change into like a running team and have him throw less. I just think it's just more of the same. And Brady's a big time completions guy. That's how he racked up, 12 50-point games. How else are they going to win unless he's throwing the ball?
Yeah, he had such an amazing year last year, but it's going to be hard to replicate. While you're right, not much changes. I mean, they do have a new head coach, but it was a guy that they brought in-house, right? And Todd Bowles, I believe was he in-house last year?
Yeah.
But Byron Leftwich is still there, so that shouldn't change too much.
Whoa, let's be real. We all know that Brady's the offensive coordinator.
Oh, sure, fine. LeBron James is the real coach in Los Angeles, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. But Todd, what do you think? You were actually probably the lowest. I had Tom Brady ranked 4th, and you had him 8th. So to have guys like, of course, you mentioned Allen and Herbert and Burrow. Why did you like all those guys more than Tom Brady? Why do you have him so low, considering how well he had, how great he was last year? Excuse me.
I think it's more. Well, with Lamar Jackson, I think Lamar Jackson just wants to keep proving, that he can be, can be one of the elite quarterbacks. Obviously, Mahomes at 5. Still Mahomes. Obviously, I dropped him down a little bit just because of Tyreek Hill leaving. Same thing with Dak Prescott. I mean, just the reason why I have, all these quarterbacks that ranked ahead of Tom Brady was all of these quarterbacks to me are this year are in a kind of want to prove everybody wrong prove everybody wrong, and to say like, hey, like, Patrick Mahomes like, no, I don't need Tyreek Hill, that I can do like Dak Prescott. I can, he can get the Cowboys where they need to go. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, I can, I can win without Devontae Adams. Lamar Jackson again really wants to earn that contract, and I think obviously Burrow and Herbert have obviously shown, obviously Burrow getting all the way to the Super Bowl. So that's one of the reasons why I had them ranked ahead of him. Obviously, Tom Brady has nothing else more to prove anyway, but that was my thinking going into my rankings, why I had all those quarterbacks ranked ahead of Tom Brady.
The last thing I'll say about Brady,
Mm-hmm.
because I was just looking over the stats here. In our league, we mentioned the 12 50-point games. He also had 9 60-point games and 3 70-point games. Like, his completions were ridiculously off the charts last year. And Mike, you mentioned it, ridiculous. And it's just what changes? I don't know. I know Gronk's gone. I don't know if Cameron Brate and Kyle Rudolph is, I wouldn't call that an upgrade. Chris Godwin's still recovering from an injury, but it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, he has Mike Evans. He's got reliable target there. Leonard Fournette can catch the ball. Tom Brady will rush for a couple touchdowns a year. It's just, you see 45 and it gives you pause, but I still have him ranked 4th. But it's interesting because he put up massive numbers last year. Let's talk about our number 2, number 3 guys. Pretty close to interchangeable. So Mike, you have Patrick Mahomes number 2. What do you like about him? We obviously know that he lost a big part of his success in Tyreek Hill. They add a couple dudes in Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We talked about the AFC West is going to be kind of a dogfight this year. Everybody seemed to get a little better, but to still have Mahomes too. What did you like about him?
I think that losing Tyreek Hill, it's going to hurt, obviously, because nobody could take a 5-yard pass and turn it into 70 yards any quicker than he could. But I think it turns Mahomes more into working like a normal quarterback would. So instead of having all these big chunk plays everywhere, he's going to have to methodically move up and down the field. And I believe while he loses, those big exciting chunk plays, he gains completions. I think he's gonna have more completions probably than he's ever had, because he's gonna have to move the ball 5 to 10 yards at a time, like most people have had to. I think that's a big deal in our point per completion league. I think last year probably helped him. When these teams were playing, that 2-eye safety look and just forcing him to try and dink and dunk, it wasn't something that he was really prepared for. And he went through a stretch of like 4 or 5 games in the middle of the year where he was struggling because, his instinct is always to be aggressive, and it was getting him in trouble. But towards the end of the year, he started figuring it out. And I'm sure that is probably what he worked on all off season. And I think he's going to be better for it.
That's a great point. I just wonder if he can not be aggressive. You know what I'm saying? Like, take those dump offs, find Travis Kelce on a regular basis. I'm sure it'll take a few games to develop a chemistry with those new guys coming in. He did throw a career high 16 interceptions last year. I mean, and I didn't get to see every Patrick Mahomes game, but I know when we were watching games, he just didn't look like that magnificent, you always hear the term unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't look like that last year. And, I read a lot of stuff about cover 2 defense really kind of stymieing the Chiefs offense, but I'm not here to nitpick a guy who was still 4th in scoring, 3rd in completions, and still threw for almost 5,000 yards. But I just wonder, without Hill, what kind of step back he takes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a massive one, but it's going to be a significant one where you're just like, whoa, is this Patrick Mahomes, or I don't know, somebody else. But yeah, there will be a drop off. I promise you that, because Mikey's right. You're not gonna Tyreek Hill. There's not another Tyreek Hill. So Juju and Valdez-Scantling better figure it out quick, or that Sky Moore, they better figure out something with him, because everybody's just gonna hone in on Travis Kelce, or unless Edwards-Helaire they can run the ball a little bit better with him, then yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be rough. He's still Patrick Mahomes, but it could be a little bit of a drop off.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill received 21, close to 22% of Mahomes' yards and close to 29% of his touchdowns last 4 seasons. But I still think Mahomes will be a top 4, top 5 quarterback. He's super talented. He had 11 50-point games last year, and he has an incredible offensive line and a great mind in their head coach. So I don't think any of us are super concerned. Todd, you have Justin Herbert ranked 2nd, as do I. Mikey had him 3rd. We all really like him a lot, but give me some of the thoughts on why he kind of sticks out for you here in 2022.
Obviously he's definitely taking that second leap, trying to be elite, in the NFL. I mean, 38 touchdowns last year, only 15 interceptions. He threw for 5,000 yards last year. So I don't think he throws that much this year, just because obviously people have it figured out a little bit more. But he's still when you're to some degree, when you're ranking the quarterbacks, it's just in the AFC West, just to some degree, it's kind of impossible. I think, well, you probably think, okay, well, you can still rank. It's hard because each one of the quarterbacks in the AFC West all have their, have their strengths and what they're good at, what makes them good. And Herbert just is really good at he can chuck that ball down the field. That's just plain and simple right there. He can just chuck it down the field on the move and everything like that. So we saw that all of last year. So I think that's what makes Herbert, I think I said kind of leapfrogging, over leapfrogging Patrick Mahomes. I mean, any other year leading up to it before, we'd say, oh, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the AFC West. But now, obviously, the AFC West is, it's going to be it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle. It's whoever comes out of that division is going to. So it's good. They're going to be battle tested. So, and I think Herbert can do. Herbert can, maybe. Obviously, Broncos fans, we want to see Russell Wilson do well, but Herbert, for fantasy purposes, definitely might overtake Patrick Mahomes this year for maybe the best quarterback in the division when it comes to fantasy purposes.
Well, he already did that. He was 2nd. He had 884 points, while Patrick Mahomes was 4th and had 860. So he's already kind of done that.
But I think, it's true. But I think he'll really just kind of start separating himself this year from that. I mean, he finished 2nd and Mahomes finished 4th, but I think this year he wins that even by more than a mile.
I think the big difference between Herbert and Mahomes is that Herbert has better weapons and they're all back. If you talk about Austin Eckler and what he can do, catch the ball in the backfield, he was tremendous when he stayed healthy for a full season. Of course, Keenan Allen's a PPR machine. You have the big playability of Mike Williams, who they just paid. Like, nothing changes other than that their right side of the offensive line upgraded with a 1st-round pick. And they were already a really good line. So, and he's super consistent. He tied Brady for 9 300-yard games. He either threw for 2 multiple touchdowns in a game or passed for 300 yards in a game in 15 of his 17 starts. That's just a major consistency, which is incredible for a guy just in his 2nd year. You always hear the cliche of sophomore slumps, and he just didn't really give that to us last year. And so we'll see what happens. They're trying to they added a couple parts defensively, and you wonder if the defense takes a step forward, does that hurt the attempts? because he does, they don't have to score as many points as they used to, but
Mhm.
we'll have to wait and see if that defense really takes a step forward. But
Well, Derwin James will be back because obviously Derwin James was hurt last
Right.
year, so that definitely to your point of the defense being better. So
yeah, for sure. So, we were talking about some of the guys up top of the list here. Mikey, do you want to mention anything about Justin Herbert? Or should we just move on?
Well, I think the one thing that I just want to throw out there, and you mentioned it, was the attempts. I mean, they were passed on 62% of their plays, which finished 5th in the league. They're just not built to run. I mean, Austin Eckler is their best running back, obviously, but the most attempts he had in a game last year was 17.
Wow.
So yeah, they're gonna chuck the ball.
A good thing to have on your fantasy team, an offense that just likes to throw. It's a lot of fun to kind of watch those points rack up on a weekly basis. All right, going down here, let's talk about Kyler Murray. We talked about him getting paid. We talked about him getting Hollywood Brown. We're all a little different in terms of where we have Kyler Murray. I guess I'm the highest on him. I have him ranked 5th. Todd has them ranked 11th. Mikey 12th. I feel like we were all different on how we thought about Kyler Murray going into last year. We were probably all of us somewhere around the top 5 or 6. Mikey 12th, not feeling it for Kyler Murray this year.
No, there's just more that I hate about their situation. Hopkins is suspended the first 6 weeks of the season. That's bad. They lost Christian Kirk. That's bad. They lost Chase Edmonds. That's bad. They did add Marquise Brown, which will help give them a deep threat, but I've never, ever liked their offensive line. So I'm concerned as to whether or not he's going to have enough time to be able to drop back and let Marquise Brown get deep enough to hit him consistently. And he seems to get these little banged up, these little nicks that put him out for a week or two. So I don't like that either.
I get that. Last season, kind of heading into this one, 21st ranked offensive line, and they have the same exact unit that comes back. So they didn't really do anything to upgrade that. Marquise Brown, we told you early in the show, dealing with an injury, and that gives me pause because I love the move. He'll come right in, and he understands what it takes to succeed with a quarterback that runs when things aren't going well. And people talk about, and I know our league is different than most leagues, in terms of running quarterbacks and then completion quarterbacks, right? A lot of people, most of the stuff you read about is Lamar Jackson, what he's capable of in terms of racking up those rushing yards and those rushing touchdowns. And you don't have to be prolific on the passing end. But that's the thing I like about Kyler Murray over like Lamar Jackson. Is like Murray's a better passer than Lamar Jackson. I think he's a better passer. I think way better passer than, let's say, Jalen Hurts. And so for a guy who, just a couple of years ago threw for almost 4,000 yards and had 26 touchdowns, and then he had those, 11 rushing touchdowns, and he was a top 4-3 something quarterback a couple of years ago. He just has that ability, and you hope he can put all the negative thoughts, as the offseason began, and he wanted that new contract and saw what everybody else was getting. And it sounded like it was frustrating him, and you hope he can just focus on it, because when he's on, he is amazing. And I know you had him on your team last year, Miguel, and I know those were times where things didn't go well. He was off to an incredible start. I mean, he had MVP type numbers in the first 8 weeks when DeAndre Hopkins was healthy, completed 72% of his passes, averaged 285 yards per game, and then it went all downhill after that after Hopkins got hurt. And obviously he's running for his life because his offensive line's not great, but he's never really had a great offensive line. While all the guys we talked about so far, top 5, top 6 offensive line. So I get your point there. But Zach Ertz is back, and once Hopkins gets back, and I just feel like the upside for him is through the roof. I have him just above Matt Stafford, and Matt Stafford is that prototypical completions, not going to rush at all. But with upside, you have to take Kyler Murray in consideration.
So here's one more negative I want to throw out, and I got this one from Warren Sharp. Kyler Murray last year was 51% completion percentage on throws inside the red zone. Only Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, and Drew Lock were worse.
Well, that doesn't make me feel good.
I don't know.
There's a reason why I believe they were using James Conner as much as they were inside the 20.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and he was also dealing with an injury last year too. I mean,
Not to his arm.
Not to his arm. I forget what his injury was. I'm trying to look it up here. I'm not seeing it. So, but okay. I mean, I see your point there. Todd, do you want to say anything about Kyler Murray?
I'll say this is the fact that he got his money, what he wanted, but at times he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and other times you're shaking your head going, what's going on? And two, little side note, I mean, more of psychological purposes, hopefully doesn't affect it, but the fact that they put in his contract that he has to do 4 hours of film study, whatever that's worth. But again, Murray is we know this is a smaller quarterback. And I agree with you, Eric. Yes, I think he's a better he's a better passer. And I think obviously that's what you want in your quarterback, in reality and in fantasy. But I don't know. It's Kyler Murray still has to show a little bit more that he can, he can be one of those top tier quarterbacks that I can feel comfortable with putting out there every single week.
I could see Eric annoyed because he drafts Kyler Murray and he's like, why isn't AJ Green getting open? Oh yeah, he's 45.
I hope that is not what I'm saying, because I'm not expecting anything from AJ Green. I figured Rondale Moore takes a step forward more than AJ Green, but again, I think it's just more for a guy that can run and pass. It's about upside, and maybe that's too much of a risk for some. Let's keep going because time is rolling here. Matt Stafford finished as the number 5 quarterback in our scoring system last year. It was one of the best seasons for him. Can he replicate those numbers in 2020, Miguel? Does things change for Stafford, who, was 7th in completions, 2nd in touchdowns? I won't give you too much in terms of the rushing department, but he does have the 13th ranked offensive line. So what do you think about Stafford?
I love him. I think that, second year within that McVay offense, I mentioned on a previous podcast that I love the move of Allen Robinson coming to that team. I think it's only going to help them. I mean, I think Stafford has a real chance to be better than he was last year, which is really saying something because, he looked back to the, Matt Stafford of his early years, which was consistently, a top, 10, sometimes top 5 guy. And I think that he's right up there.
No, I mean, the obvious thought about anytime someone wins a Super Bowl is there going to be a Super Bowl hangover. But it didn't seem like they lost a lot of guys. You see a lot of that where players that get the Super Bowl ring and then they want to go and get paid. And most people are willing to pay them because of what they just accomplished. But no worries in terms of that regard. And, bringing the my NFL MVP, which is ridiculous. He didn't win it. But Cooper Kupp obviously was phenomenal. I don't know if Cooper Kupp will replicate those numbers, but I mean, for a guy that had 7 50-point games, 2 60-point games, 41 touchdowns, I don't know if he'll reach 41. I don't know. I guess it depends on how motivated this team is next year.
32 red zone touchdowns for Stafford led the NFL.
Yeah, I saw that stat today. I was looking through that. That's a ridiculous stat.
Yep.
Todd, what do you think about Matt Stafford?
Well,
it looks like
I
you have him ranked 10, so you're a little lower than the rest of us.
Yeah. A little bit of the Super Bowl hangover. It happens to it. They say, well, it may not happen because everybody's coming back and it should be easy. Well, everybody came back for the Bucks and they didn't repeat either. So that that doesn't
So
always.
what? They were
Yeah.
better offensively last year. The Bucks were.
Yes, but there still was at times where it wasn't from previous years, from the first season when Tom Brady was there and what he did. But with Stafford, obviously you have to think too, with Cam Akers coming back, that they're going to want to try to run the ball a little bit more too as well. I mean, obviously, Darrell Henderson and they had Sony Michel, so they were kind of going by a committee with that. But I think they're going to want to try to utilize him a little bit more because let's face it, coming into that season before he got hurt, he was going to be the number one guy. So to me, there's always a little bit of regression a little bit. I mean, not obviously I have him in my top 10. It's not like I put him all the way down to number 20. So I just think at the end of the day, there will be a little bit of just a little bit of regression.
I don't know. If I'm Sean McVay and I'm a genius,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking I've got Matthew Stafford, I've got Cooper Kupp, I've got Allen Robinson. You know what? I really, really think we have to give Darrell Henderson the ball more.
Well, first of all, I think you give Darrell. It's gonna be Cam Akers anyway. It ain't gonna be Darrell Henderson. I'll tell you that right now. But yeah, no, I mean, I get it, Mikey. I mean, obviously, yes. So when you have Cooper Kupp who did what he did last year, and like I said, everybody coming back. Yes, the situation is set up for success. I get that, but there's always a little bit. The mindset's a little bit different because now you won the Super Bowl, so everybody's going to give you their best shot. And I just think at the end of the day, everybody's going to try to stop Cooper Kupp. So that might obviously open up for Allen Robinson, and then and then that's why I think they want to get Cam Akers going a little bit more too, so they can find that balance. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying McVay's not an idiot, but it's there's you sometimes you can't expect it to be all sunshine and roses sometimes 2 years in a row. I mean, it's just the way the NFL is. It's hard to do. Some of the greatest teams ever couldn't even do it. So that's what I think on Stafford.
All right, so how we'll do this here. I had you guys rank 3 guys. And I'm gonna start with Todd because of one of the guys he has higher than the rest of us. But so Todd, rank these guys and talk about your top guy of the 3. I asked you guys to rank Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson. As I'm looking over the stats, we're all pretty close in terms of where we have them ranked, in terms of like one right after the other, kind of. But Todd, rank those 3 and talk about your top guy.
So I have Burrow first, Prescott second, and Russell Wilson third.
And you have Joe Burrow third, right? Third overall amongst all quarterbacks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason I had Joe Burrow first overall, obviously, I love their offense. With their three wide receivers. Obviously, I don't make any, I don't, make any secrets. I think Jamar Chase. I mean, what he did last year was just unbelievable. And they have Joe Mixon running the ball, and Burrow just took that step of, really early in his career, and and the fact that he got to a Super Bowl and what he did, I just love their offense. Their offense is the Bengals offense is just I mean is one of the best. And then Dak at number 2, that's more of
Well, just hold on.
Sorry.
We'll get back. I just wanted you to talk about your top guy. Mikey, anything you want to say about Joe Burrow? Go ahead and rank your guys and give me some quick thoughts on Joe Burrow, and then talk about your number 1 guy.
Okay. So I think I had them in the order that you mentioned. Prescott, Burrow, then Wilson.
And you have them 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. To talk about Burrow, like I think he'll be good. Like, I mean, he's got 3 of the best receivers in the game. That doesn't change from last year, other than he's, going into another year in the system. The reason why I placed him below somebody like Prescott is I think Cincinnati at times, especially red zone wise, they're very heavily reliant on Joe Mixon, as opposed to, a lot of these other quarterbacks where they're constantly thrown in the red zone.
Yeah, I agree. He had 10 games of 299 yards or less. He only had 5 50-point games. I mean, he had a 70-point game and an 80-point game. The 6 games where he had 39 points or less, because you're absolutely right. I think they want to be a balanced team, and when they have the matchups, they'll take advantage, or they'll use the run to open up the pass. And so there's going to be weeks where Burrow's not going to be a top 5, maybe not a top 8 quarterback, because things are working on the running end. But you had Prescott higher than the other 2. What are your thoughts? A guy who ended up finishing 6th overall. He had a couple big weeks to help that, but he loses one of his weapons in Amari Cooper. He does have CeeDee Lamb back, who has just all the talent in the world. But how are we thinking about Prescott and his Cowboy offense?
I mean, I feel like his is just going to be based on volume. Like, nothing in the running game really impresses me. Like, is Zeke Elliott going to be better than he's been? No. Tony Pollard's okay, but like, I feel like the Cowboys defense is going to regress on top of that. Their offensive line is worse, which means they're not going to be able to run the ball. I just feel like they're going to, in order to stay competitive, they're going to have to throw.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
That's what I said about Dak, was all about volume for Dak. And he was already sacked 30 times last year, and loses Leo Collins and Connor Williams, and so who knows what that offensive line is going to look like. And well, Amari Cooper wasn't everybody's favorite fantasy wide receiver. He was a decent wide receiver that he relied on, and Gallup may not even be ready for week 1. And is James Washington going to come in and be that guy? I don't know. There's a lot of questions, but he has the ability. We've seen him, he had a 70-point game, 4 60-point games, 7 50-point games. So his upside is through the roof, and he's 2 years now off that torn ACL, which a lot of folks will tell you that, hampered his ability last year. So, the sky's the limit, but it's consistent. Are you going to get consistent weeks? I'll tell you who had him last year that, man, I was frustrated a lot watching his games last year. And I feel like it's only going to be a lot more frustrations for sure. Prescott, I had the same as Mikey, I believe, where it was Prescott, Burrow, and Wilson. And I'll just talk about Russell Wilson to kind of finish off this group. But, 16th ranked offensive line. They pretty much bring the same unit back this year. Obviously the numbers were down for him last year, but Pete Carroll didn't do him any favors. I thought, despite the run first offense that Pete Carroll brought to the table, Wilson did such a good job with the opportunities that were presented to him. And so now to be able to be put in a system with Nathaniel Hackett, and while it's going to take some time to figure all that out and what they want to do and what they have, I mean, with the running game they have, sure, that's going to take some volume away from Wilson. That's why I have him ranked 9th, but there's going to be weeks where he's going to light it up and cook, because he's got amazing options and, running backs that can catch the ball a little bit. And this guy has been fantasy top 5 for pretty much most of his career. And so I think what's going to happen, well, I don't know. Our league's different because we have so many Bronco fans in it, but you see his numbers from last year, and I think that's going to deter a few people. And he's probably going to go higher than 9th because of who's in the league. But, Wilson led the NFL in yards per attempt, passer rating from a clean pocket before week 5. So things are going well for him. And Allen Cook, who had him on his team along with a couple other Seahawks, but it was just, and we actually had a pretty good final three contests of the season too. So there's a lot of change for Russell Wilson. I think he's a veteran at this point. So I think he's got his routines in place. He's a good leader. And I think, he could do better than 9, depending on everything goes on, how the rest of at least my top 8 go. But man, there's so much upside for him. But there might be weeks where the running game's going well and they won't need to. Need to throw 50 times, as we saw Russell Wilson have to, and the last couple of years, because the team just wasn't that good. Anything you guys want to say about Russell Wilson before we move on?
I think the schedule's brutal at the end of the year. That's concerning to me. You mentioned when he's upright, he's good, and that would be my biggest concern is the Broncos' offensive line and some of these teams they're going to have to play in that ending stretch of the season.
Well, if anything, I'm glad it's at the end of the season because hopefully they're firing on all cylinders or everybody knows their role. And if it was at the beginning, I'd probably be a little more concerned, but we'll see. I'm a Bronco fan. I don't hide that by any stretch, but I've also been a guy that never drafted Broncos because I didn't want my day to be doubly terrible if things don't go well. But I'm excited, and Russell Wilson is a proven fantasy commodity. As we go along here, let's see. We've been going maybe a little less than an hour, so we'll speed it up a little bit here in terms of everybody loves Lamar Jackson because of the epic fantasy potential he can give you. I know Mikey's not a big fan of the word potential, but 2019, he was number 3 in our scoring system among quarterbacks. He had 36 passing touchdowns, 1,200 rushing yards, and 7 touchdowns. Mikey, you have him 15th, so you're not super high on him at all.
I think you saw the highest of highs for him in that season. And while I still think he's a good quarterback, I just don't think that – I think what the Ravens are telling you is that that's not how they're wanting their team to be built. Like they took away his best receiving, like wide receiver. I mean, obviously his best weapon is Mark Andrews, but they got rid of Marquise Brown and didn't do a whole lot to replace him. So like their team is so heavily relying on Lamar running the ball and Lamar making plays. I think that's why he's having a hard time staying healthy at this point. I don't want to say that year was fluky, but I think there was a little bit of that to it. Like people hadn't really seen him before and had a hard time dealing with it. Now, a couple years under his belt, I think it's harder for him to consistently put out those type of performances week in and week out.
Mikey, he had 86 points against Indianapolis in week 5.
Yeah, it's 1 week.
Doesn't that just get you jazzed to have someone on your team that could just put up 80 points in a week?
That happened against Todd, so I'm sure, he...
Yeah,
there's so much upside if things are working well. He dealt with a lot of injuries. He didn't play a full season. But, one stat that jumped out at me is we're a completion league, right? Point per completion. Jackson had 37 or more passing attempts in a game just 4 times in 2019 and 2020. But he did have 5 in 2021. I think a lot of that was because of all the injuries to the running backs, and they had to throw. The last thing I'll say about it is a contract year. Saw what Kyler Murray just got. Maybe there's a little more motivation to have a great season, to get paid, and not get forgotten.
The Ravens aren't a team comfortable playing in the 30s.
This is true. But, I mean, does that matter for the potential of what Lamar Jackson can do?
100%. You need touchdowns. And if you're playing with a team that wants to play low 20s, high teens, I don't know. It's not necessarily somebody I'd be comfortable with as my starter.
Gotcha. I have him ranked 10th, I believe. 10th. Todd has him 4th. Todd. Lamar Jackson, 4th.
So, right. So the reason I put him 4th was really just.
I know why you did. It's because you're crazy. Is that right? Is that right, Mikey? Is that nuts to see him ranked 4th?
No, the reason that he did that was because Todd remembers things. And as I just mentioned,
Oh, he remembered that week 5.
He sure did.
Todd, go ahead.
Well, yeah, well, yeah. Hey, that's still gives me nightmares. So the main reason why I put him 4th is just the fact too. You said it's a contract year, and I look at quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, whatever the case may be, and I look at their situations, and if there's a contract year, their motivation is just a smidge higher. And I think the fact that he saw what Murray got, and the fact that he still wants to prove he can be, he can be up there, the top tier quarterbacks. That's ultimately why I have him 4th. Is it's not the numbers. It's what's going to motivate him. It's what's going to motivate him to get those big numbers, outrageous numbers,
Man,
and so forth.
Outrageous is right.
I so wish there was a situation where, like, because I know Todd won't take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, so this won't happen. But I really wish there was a situation like where we were on draft day and he'd have to put his money where his mouth is, and like Brady, Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson were all there for him, like in the 4th round, and he says Lamar Jackson, because I don't believe it.
Ooh, doesn't believe it. All for show?
Maybe.
Todd doesn't believe it right now.
It's. I mean, it's.
Is that true, Todd? If it's your pick and it's Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, and I don't know, Dak Prescott or Mahomes, you're going Lamar Jackson over all of them.
Let's see.
Someone-
He
said
took too
I'm
Jackson.
looking at the rankings. It's guys that's all behind your guys in the ranking.
So
Mahomes, Prescott, Rodgers, Brady, Wilson. Oh, Todd.
I'd have to think about it, but I'm not saying I wouldn't do it.
Oh man. Okay. We're running out of time here. In terms, we'll talk about other quarterbacks as we go along. Actually, we got to talk about at least Aaron Rodgers and what our thoughts is. Mike, give me some quick thoughts on Aaron Rodgers.
Oh boy, where do we start? Biggest concern with him, obviously, with the loss of Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams last year was 3rd in the NFL in red zone targets. So I gotta believe that their ability to throw the ball down in the red zone, it's going to become more of a Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon type thing than it was before, which is very concerning. I still think they're going to be able to like move up and down the field. I think their offense is still going to be decent. Like they're going to be able to move the ball. So I think his completions are going to be okay. But I think there's going to be a difference as far as his touchdowns are concerned. I don't think he'll be able to put up similar. He had 37 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I don't see that. I think his picks are going to go up, and I think his touchdowns probably go down to maybe like 31, 32.
Mikey has Aaron Rodgers ranked 10th. Todd has him up to 7th. I have him at 13th, so a little all over the place. And the upside, I don't know if it's there anymore, in my honest opinion. But, I don't want to spend we're getting to the end of the show here. Let's get into a sleeper. I told you guys I have 2. Just give me one. Todd, give me one of your quarterback sleepers.
I have in my bold predictions, but Zach Wilson is a sleeper.
Okay, tell me, give me a couple reasons why.
So, number 1, still the same system, still the same head coach. 2, I liked what they brought in weapons wise for him. And second, I just think this, obviously, had a decent first year. But I think this year instead of a sophomore slump, it's a sophomore leap a little bit, and that's why I think Zach Wilson will be a sleeper.
Mikey, give me a sleeper.
From what I heard, there's not a whole lot of sleeping going on when it comes to Zach Wilson. Ooh.
Well
Yeah.
done, sir.
Um,
Watch out, mamas. He coming for you.
Hide your mamas, hide your kids, hide your mamas.
Mine's Tua. Like when you look at what Miami did, they improved their offensive line, they improved their receivers, they improved their running backs, and they brought in an offensive coach. If he
But it's Tua good.
If he's not, then he's not. But I honestly
we'll find
believe
out this year. We'll find out this year for sure.
Yeah, he's got everything there for him. So I believe that he's going to be a really good quarterback. I really do.
Okay. I felt like you said that last year, but I mean, obviously it's different.
There were flashes.
There were flashes. I don't know if I believe it. All right, Todd, give me a bust.
I will go. Tough one. I'll go Ryan Tannehill. The reason I say Ryan Tannehill is just because losing AJ Brown I think hurts a little bit, and obviously I know there's still it's still Derrick Henry show, but I don't know. I think Tannehill takes a little bit of a hit this year.
They finished 12th in our league last year, so I could see that being. You have them ranked 20th, so sure, finishing 8 spots. What are we at here? 8 spots down. So I can see that. Mikey, give me a bust.
Mine's Lamar Jackson. I kind of already went why. I don't dig his weapons. I believe that they're too heavily reliant on his legs. I think he's bound to be injured at some point.
All right. Last question, and this wasn't on the list, but I'm going to ask you anyway. At this point, because I mean, quarterback's such a big deal in our league. Who do you see yourself drafting? Like who, in terms of where you are in the draft, and whether it's this, based on your thought, how you feel right now, who is the quarterback you think you'll end up with as of today? Mikey?
I could see Trevor Lawrence as a good backup for me.
Oh, I'm not asking about backup. Don't be boring with a backup. Nice try.
Oh, that's such a hard question to answer.
It is very hard.
I'm right in the middle, so I'm drafting 6th, and what that means for me is I get a good view based on the first few picks of knowing which direction that I'm going in. So I can't easily say that I'm going quarterback because based on what those first couple picks do, like could be
and I'm not necessarily asking you to pick the first 4 picks. I think just in general, like maybe in your overall mindset that maybe you'd prefer in your own preference that you would prefer to have a quarterback drafted in the 3rd or 4th round. And if that's the case, who do you think would be there? And I don't know how many mock drafts you've done. I know Todd's done some mock drafts, and maybe there's a quarterback you ended up with more than others. But I don't know. I think it's more of a feeling more than anything else, if that makes sense.
Okay. I don't know. Matthew Stafford. I'll throw that name out there.
Okay. Todd, is there anybody out there that, based on where you're drafting, based on where you hope to draft a quarterback, who would be at that spot?
I'll just go my homer pick, but I'll go Russell Wilson.
Okay. I could see that if you're waiting to the 6th round. For me, kind of where I'm drafting at the end of the 1st round. I don't know if I would go quarterback necessarily in the first 2, but maybe in that 3rd or 4th round. If that's the case, then it would probably be between Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford. So that's kind of my thought at that point. So there you have it, quarterback talk. We didn't get to everybody. There's a lot of quarterbacks to talk about. Hope we got to the ones that mattered the most. And if you have questions and thoughts about it, it's interesting to see as we get closer, and the injuries will mount up, and it always plays a factor as we get closer. So guys, thanks for coming on here on this July 26th. And next week, we're going to talk about some running backs. Now, there's a lot of running backs, and we only have a few weeks left to go. We have about a month. So we'll do as many as we can, or we'll pick some select guys, and then, we got to do an episode with wide receivers. Maybe, we combined it, and then we'll kind of see how it goes. We'll do like a tight end. I know no one's to talk about tight ends and whatnot, but we'll do like a mock draft on there, and then we'll have one where it's the show before the draft. We'll kind of talk about some bold predictions and our thoughts as we get closer. Obviously, a lot of positional battles are going to be taking place, so it should be fun here in the next month. As we mentioned, it's 26th. Our draft is officially on August 28th, so we got a draft date and we're ready to go. Soon enough, we'll be watching games. It'll be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season. So, for Todd Diamond, Mikey Renault, I'm Eric Lansing. We'll see you next time on the MHA Podcast.